We're in Florida. I'm with my buddy Mark Cave, who's been building his own house all by himself. Let's go check it out. So Mark came up and introduced himself to me at a builder show where I was presenting 1 year, and we talked for probably like 10 minutes, 15 minutes with his wife. And the next year, he comes up to me and he's like, hi. And I'm like, Mark Cave, how's it going? He's like, oh, I didn't know if you'd remember me. Like, he ripped down the house that was there and then built that house. Now he ripped down this house with his own hands and is building this house by himself. Like, I don't know anybody else who does that. So yeah, you're pretty memorable.
Sweet. Actually, the house that was on here, I knocked it down by hand, and that's some of the wood I had left over. This is some of the wood here that was left over from the house.
So wait, you started knocking down the old house 3 weeks before your 60th birthday?
Actually, 3 months before my 60th birthday. I started building this 3 weeks before my 60th birthday.
Awesome.
So I did it all by hand. I did everything as conservative as I could. I saved all the concrete, saved all the metal, all that product, saved as much wood as I could, and I'm using it on this house and everything else. You learn to have thin men, so you can hold up to things on the ceiling, and that helps with obviously having no other furniture at all.
So you've got a million jigs around here too.
Yeah. That's one of the things that's kind of being an engineer is very challenging, or you get a chance to use your creative juices. So this.
Okay, Mark, what is that?
So we have here a soffit. This is the only soffit in the house with a vent. Aerials, because of a sealed attic, I don't need any regular ventilation that people would normally have in the attic. But I use this soffit ventilation to feed a vent that goes into the rest of the house for the fresh air ERV.
And we'll talk more about that as we go. So it follows this. There's a 10-inch duct in here, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so 10-inch duct follows inside of this insulated, encapsulated attic section, but it's not conditioned. So it's gaining heat slowly as we go, but I don't think that Mark is super worried about that. He's got a very specific idea about what he wants to have happen here. So there is the 10-inch duct coming into the, what is basically the garage attic. And this is an experiment.
Correct.
Okay, and so what he's doing is creating a staging area for fresh air, and we're going to talk more about that when we talk about the mechanical room, which is right there. We'll get there in a minute.
This is the air extraction for the cooked up extraction air system. So I have a fan, remote fan that blows out, and so I have a matching fan for the fresh air makeup. This was actually kind of a difficult thing for the inspector to comprehend, because I have a makeup air coming from the top and the extraction come from below, which is not normal how most people do.
And so when you click the kitchen exhaust, it will turn on two fans, this one and the other one.
Correct.
And you have that other one hooked up with filtration and stuff like that?
I don't at this time. I needed to get it hooked up for the inspector, so it's just hooked with a pipe. It's not even taped, I think. But just to give an example of what goes on, this is the still creation tube. So this is a downdraft vent. This pops up and sucks the air out this way. I need to have a makeup air accordingly, but I'm going to have it for whatever speed it's run at. So the makeup air comes in here and it goes out over the front and gets drawn in to draw the vapors and the steam and everything out the back.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're not using downdraft because it's an island. We're using downdraft because Mark's wife likes downdraft, and they have it now, and they like that it goes up and forms kind of a backsplash. So then you catch the backsplash, and also he's able to then build a hood. There will be a hood over this just to allow the makeup air to go down and in and capture those cooking fumes from it. And they're using induction, so there's not the NOx and the sulfur dioxide and things like that, combustion byproducts that we're worried about. But of course, you want to ventilate the same way no matter what cooking fuel you're using. I actually really like this. it's never occurred to me to do this.
The other thing I have, which is on here, is a fresh air exhaust. So this will be continuously drawing out from this area here because we plan to have like a coffee pot toaster sited here. So any of the fumes generated by those will be extracted.
So that's the ERV. It goes to the ERV.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So the ERV and the fresh air from the ERV is up there. Okay, great. So there's a fresh.
So on the note of building all by yourself, first of all, did you design this house yourself?
I did, yes.
Okay, and this is a fully truss house. I'm going to show you some of the details on the trusses, which are pretty insane. And then you installed basically everything here all by yourself.
Yes, I've had some help on the trusses on here. That get a crane into these. Well, this is a 17-foot ceiling, and the crane I built only went up 14 feet. So I had to get a crane in, get a crew in to help me with that because I didn't want to take time because the crane.
And you had already been injured once by your.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay, so do you think? I think we are both control freaks. Clearly, you are probably a control freak if you're watching this channel. Do you see your control freakishness as somewhat of a handicap?
in some respects, if you want to do things fast, yes, because if I don't like what I've done, I'll tear it down and do it again.
And just timeline wise, for those of you who are thinking about doing this all by yourself, how long have you been building this?
I started this on my 60th birthday, or just before my 60th birthday. I'm now 66, and it's not completed, so kind of gives you a kind of a time frame. The other thing as well, it is a great way of staying fit. So.
I mean, he honestly, I was like, you were special forces, right? Because he's got like a soldier vibe. But he was like, no, I'm just an engineer. So yeah, he's just definitely like a very trim. I definitely gained weight when I finished building art. Went back to the dad vibe.
I'm going to see what happens.
Is there going to be exterior insulation anymore?
Yes, there is. I'm planning to do a blanket all the way around the house. It'll be an R5. It'll be Rockwood insulation, with 1.25 inches. That's kind of the first layer. There'll be. It's kind of interesting process. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and Matt Reiser says it really clearly. When you rather have a jacket on you or stuff your ribs. And so what I'm doing is I put a jacket on the outside of this house with the Rockwood insulation. That gives me the continuous insulation all the way around. Now that gives you a thermal break. I will be putting a rain screen on top of that, and then I'll put the siding on top of that. One of the things that I came across when I first started building this in Florida is people didn't know what a rain screen was. My architect had no idea, and people in the construction industry just did not do that in Florida. Since I've seen it become more popular, people are doing it, but I still see where people are putting stucco on the side of houses with no rain screen on it. So over time it's going to fail. So this is kind of where I want to be. I plan to retire in this house. I don't want to be doing any maintenance when that's done. So in 20 years' time, I don't even want to paint. So I go an extreme on that. So.
Nice. Okay, and so to make a point that I've made before on our channel, the reason that I really like exterior insulation is that you will end up having 4 studs in a row or 3 studs in a row or whatever, and you'll see it all over the place. And when you put the exterior insulation on, you don't have to worry. This is not going to annoy you as much when you've got an exterior jacket and I'm not missing out on this insulation by most of this wall section right here being wood.
So this wall is part of the enclosure. This wall is not. This is back of the garage. So this wall I use just a regular water proofing barrier from Henry in that respect. This wall here, and Prosoco, I use Prosoco on the wall here. They say do not leave it exposed to sunlight for more than 360 days, 1 year. I left it more than that. And this is what happens to if you leave it more exposed. But
Wait, you didn't strip this off? It fell off?
I have stripped some of it off, but
okay.
Most of it, as you see up there, it peels back.
Yeah.
And that's actually the filler they have, but the Prosoco is the orange colored, the Cat 5.
Got it.
And so that kind of was just, the sun just beat the heck out of it.
And 360 days is kind of a long time for a system like this. Like my Mento was only, I think, 3 or 4 months.
Right.
So if you're gonna be doing a DIY build, just know that you're gonna take longer, and so yeah, you might want to wait.
So this is polywool, and this stuff they say you can expose it for 2 years with no degradation. So I put that on just a little over a year ago, after this sort of basically all came off, Another thing with Presoko, it doesn't like pressure treated wood. This is all pressure treated plywood here, and it doesn't seem to take that as well as regular plywood in that respect. So that's one of the other things I'd warn against if you're going to take time. This will be all polywalled, and that's one of the next things to do on the exterior here to give it a bit more protection.
By the way, to point out for everybody, this is plywood, not OSB. If he had painted over the OSB and then it had come off, likely you would have been replacing all of that sheathing too, right?
So let me tell you where I am. This is 3/4 inch plywood.
Whoa, okay.
And it's all tongue and grooved.
Oh, okay.
I tongue and grooved every piece so that I could have an interlocking system here. So there's, you're obviously going to have some ventilation going through there, but every edge is tongue and grooved together, and they're all over. You have the running bond type of installation. So if you would take this apart, you would see there's a tongue on one side, a groove on the other side.
Just to reiterate, Mark, this entire house is 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood.
Correct. And I tongue and grooved everyone. I have the router bits, and I went round routing everyone, and the pressure treated ones are really heavy, so I wouldn't recommend doing that if I was you. But all the bond course is pressure treated. The second course up is just regular plywood.
Yeah.
Around the sides. This end here has pressure treated all the way across because it's fully exposed.
This guy did all of this himself. I don't like lifting regular 3/4 inch plywood and putting it up. Hey, like you're climbing up a ladder.
Yeah, so to tell you the truth, I had assistance on this wall because it was
okay. He accepted assistance on one of the walls.
Yeah,
that's good to do.
This was pretty tough to do it.
Here we've got a little detail for the exterior insulation. So he's got a double junction box here, so the exterior insulation will come to there, and that way this can all sit outside.
Yeah, I try to go everywhere with low maintenance. So where the lights go in, this is obviously pressure treated behind you. That's just a spacer, but I put the 1 inch hardy trim on it, and I cut it down and made the hole in it, and just made it the size I want it to be. You slide that in place. This will be all the light will adhere to that, so you can actually have a standoff that gives the light the 3D effect.
On a recent video in Spain, I was talking about tilt and turns, which he's got here. So these are all the same kind of windows that I have in our house, which is Alpen. These are UPVC tilt turn, European style. They don't have a flange, do they, Mark?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay. So they're flanged, so American style install, but European style functionality. And one of the things that I was curious about is screen. There's a screen right here that comes standard, and it kind of like fits into the recess in the outside. So I thought that was pretty slick because I wasn't sure that was actually going to work.
One of the things I was trying to be careful about is the type of windows I install. All the ones that have been exposed to the sun, I put in fiberglass windows, and all the areas where they're not exposed to the sun, I put in just regular PVC. I do like the PVC. They have that's a tilt turn that they come up, but they didn't offer that in the fiberglass. But I was more concerned about UV degradation of the plastic in sun exposure, and this house is going to be long term. So this side, being a south side, gets a lot of sunlight. So every window on this side is fiberglass. Every other window is PVC.
This is the sill plate gasket, and it's got a little dam on each side, and then it's pretty thick rubber. It's nice. It feels good. I would wear that. It's great. Okay, so what I want to show you guys is, here's Mark's workbench. Like, obviously we have plans, and I really like that these are the duct plans that are sitting right up here. Also, aside from all the comparisons of this is what most people use for sill gasket, by the way, and here's Mark's version. We've got little cut sheets for products that he's using. This is what especially caught my eye. I just thought that was so hilarious that this is just out front and center on the table. And then of course he was very polite. He's a very polite Englishman. Gotta have the treats.
I had them spray all the walls prior to me doing any wiring. The idea of that is it leaves the wires clean and doesn't have all the spray foam over it. And so that way I can, if I need to do any modifications, I can. You can see it here, it's quite clear that the wires were done after the spray foam. And the same with HVAC. I did the spray foam before the HVAC because the HVAC makes it very difficult to actually spray parts of the roof line if you're going to do that. So when you're building, you don't realize, but I had this big void up here. So I turned it into a storage area, this huge area there. So, no matter how well you plan things, you find things that you didn't initially think were going to be available. And this was a huge space that would just made a good storage area.
As soon as we walked in, I was like, ooh, what's that? And he said, yeah, it's Boracare, which is what we also used.
Standard product. You mix the two together, and
Yep.
and that gives you, one of the things in Florida, and it happens a lot, southern states, the termites are just prolific there for us. So to avoid any intrusion after the house is built, I just want to make sure everything is sprayed. And I put a dye in it so that I can see where I've sprayed my hem spray. If you look at the wall behind you, you'll see it's green. That's the dye on it. So that wall's been sprayed.
You put the dye in it, or they put the dye in it?
No, I put a dye in it.
God damn, Mark, you're smarter than everybody who's making all these products, too. They couldn't have put the dye in it themselves. That's so funny. By the way, guys, this is how confident I was that Mark Cave runs a very clean job site. Didn't even think about footwear until I was in the car.
So one of the things that to me was real important, the serviceability of the places. I tried to create as many catwalks as possible in the attic, kept everything as condensed as possible together, so that and all the ductwork is supported and insulated. This is the fresh air system. This is the return for the fresh air, so doesn't need to be insulated for that. All the ductwork is primarily hard ductwork for all the runs. The last 5 feet typically is flexible duct, and that goes out to the things. The reason with that, because I don't know, I listen to a lot of people, there seems to be a little bit of controversy on it, but the noise is reduced by they're having that flex duct on the last 5 to 10 feet of the ductwork. I won't know till I try it, but that's all part of the experimentation here with this house. A lot of it is new to me as far as that goes. I've never done that before. In fact, this duct job was the first time I've ever done any ductwork, so this is all.
You installed all this ductwork?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that I make a point about is that doesn't matter so much if it's a ceiling register. It's only really going to kill you if that's a floor register and you do that flex for the last bit, because that's where it's going to get dirty, and then you're going to have stuff, crap falling in there.
These all weave around the truss. There's another problem with trusses. There's not an easy place to run ductwork. You do have to maneuver around the truss work. In that respect, they build the trusses to support the load. They don't build them to support the duct system. So that's kind of one of the things that is kind of interesting here, mapping it out, trying to get it through. Most of the ductwork is 12-inch. There is some 14-inch in here. But, there's not a lot of 12-inch holes in the trusses in this complicated assembly. When you've got a simple assembly or a bigger roof, they can do. This roof has dormers integrated into the roof, so that the space available in the rooms is limited in that respect. One of the things I wanted to achieve is make sure there was, because this is a condition attic, that there was no stack effect going on. So I put these vents up high here, which are on the return side of the HVAC, and that will hopefully reduce the amount of moisture and hot air up the top of the trusses here. This is a big area here.
And so you're supplying this attic as well?
I supply it from downstairs, effectively, with the leakage in the drywall, and go through the ratio points and any other connection points, because it's just naturally going to leak in that respect, because I'm not sealing around any of the lights, and there's a plethora of lights in this build.
Okay, so here's the thing about what Mark is pointing out. And by the way, Mark he's a friend of mine and also a client of mine. We did talk about this house, and like many of my clients, will think through something, and like, for example, that kitchen exhaust, he'll come up with a better idea than what I suggest. Here's a place where he's willing to experiment on his house, going against some of the advice that he might have gotten from me as well. So just before anybody does that and just returns from the attic, calling it a conditioned space and just assuming that the air is going to come up from below, what that kind of an approach will do, and Mark knows this because we've talked about this, is depressurize the attic, which may increase your air infiltration from outside if the spray foam job isn't perfect. But as you can see, Mark really QC'd this job, and so he looked over every inch of this and made sure that there weren't any holes. Obviously, also, we're going to test this. But then if he finds out that he does need to add some supply air to the attic, he can always just pop a grill into one of these supply ducts up here.
Soundproofing rooms. So all the interior walls would be soundproof. I'm using the Rockwell sound and what they call it,
Safe and sound.
safe and sound. So as an example, if you step into the bathroom, it goes dead quiet in there when you stand in there. It's kind of interesting how much noise it absorbs.
Nice.
And so everywhere there's a wall, there'll be insulation, whether it be safe and sound or whether exterior insulation. This is going through the closet into the machine room.
Beautiful.
HU, dehumid, ERB, and a hybrid water heater.
And here we have a blower door that's blowing out into the side yard. Okay, so that's our main ventilation. Thank you for turning that off for the video, by the way.
One of the things that you've mentioned on your shows before is the fact that when you do the AHU, pick as large as possible filter as you can. I applied portion that. There's also a scale you have to think about is how much do the filters cost. So I went as large as I could within a reasonable budget I could afford. So this is a way larger filter than would be normally required.
That's a 20 by 25, I think, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So that kind of, I think it had about 0.14 was the water column that it would put in static pressure. So I felt that was close enough to where I wanted to be. You always recommend getting below 0.1. But that was kind of where I was going with this, to try and reduce as much static pressure on the system. That's why it's solid pipes everywhere, very little flex. That helps. Just basic things like that. The way this system works is just you got the AHU, the regular AHU is a Bosch system. It was pretty evenly, from what I can tell, on keeping the air cool and dehumidifying. But during the shoulder seasons in Florida, you don't really need the AHU. So I wanted to make sure that we had a dehumid going on. So I got a Santa Fe, I think it's a 120 dehumidifier, so that we can ensure that the way this operates, you close off the back end of the inlet, the return part of the AHU, and you draw from the ductwork into the filter, and then out into the supply side. When it's not being used, the supply side is blocked, so you don't get. There's a process called Bernoulli, where you have an air drawer across the surface, it sucks air up through that. I didn't want that to happen with this, and so it bypassed this whole system. So I put a damper on the output of the Santa Fe, so when the air handler is in operation and blowing through, it doesn't draw air, short-circuiting the air handler through the system there. So this is controlled for in and out of the air system. So, and all this was constructed. I did it myself. I've never done this stuff before. So if anyone's going to critique on it, please, this is my first attempt at it. I did rubber gasket this area here, so that if this moves, that does give some separation from that to the system, because there's hard ducts on the output of this. On that one, there is on the return, there is a flex duct, so I wasn't quite so critical on that.
And then you've got zones in this system, which my take is generally that, like, you can put them in if you want to. They probably won't close in a high-performance home, and you're going to experiment with that.
Correct. So I put them in because it's easy to do at this stage. My expectation is the first year I won't ever use them. The reason being is I want to see how the system performs, give it some time to go through a full year cycle, and use them if I need to. And go that way. This is a family home. My youngest daughter is 10. My son lives with me in his early 20s. They will move on to some point in time. Do I need their rooms to be cooled? I don't know. With a super performance home, a high performance home, I mean, I don't need to worry about it, because one zone will work just as well, because once you've cooled the house, it doesn't really change much by turning the size off. There's not going to be a lot of air leakage. So I'm just, as I say, this is experimental. Just as I mentioned about the returning the attic, I'm going to experiment with that as far as, do I need to put a supply into the attic and go from there. That's kind of one of the things that it's all experimental today, and everyone has their own perception of what should be done. Mine is learn as you go along.
That's awesome. And when are you going to start your YouTube channel? Show us your ERV over here.
So, the standard ERV, I went a little bit overboard as far as the CFM capability. This is a Renew Air one. I went to a 225 capability. All the ductwork is hard ductwork on this, except for the last little bit of connection points, just to make it easy into the bathrooms. So every bathroom has a return that goes into the system, and all the feeds go into the bedrooms. So each bedroom has its own independent feed, and then there's one for the kitchen. But basically, it's a standard system. So the exhaust goes out through the soffit to the outside wall. The feed supply comes in through that attic that we talked about earlier, about the return from the front. So all the air comes from the front of the building. It gets somewhat treated because it's got a long distance to travel, and so any heavy particles will fall out. There is filtration inside the ERV, so that does give you some filtering for any pollen or anything like that that would escape through that whole process. That's pretty much it. This is all experiment. If that doesn't work, I can just pop a hole through the soffit and do a new vent there. So we're learning as we go. There's an in and out on these hybrid water heaters. The in is on the top, the out is on the back side here. So I plan to take duct into the attic space here, which is normally heated during the day because of the sun and everything like that. And I'll take the exhaust and blow it into this side over here, which is going to be the main part for the feed to the ERV and to the fresh air vent for the kitchen. So the idea is that any air that comes through this is going to cool to some degree and it'll be dehumidified because of the system here, and that will help help the ERV. I know this doesn't work 24 hours a day. It's on for periods of time. It all depends on usage, how often it comes on, but it will help to some degree. And that's, again, it's all part of the process of experimentation. How much will I gain by doing this? It gives plenty of volume for this. Is what you need in the attic. It's like 700 cubic feet to be able to use these efficiently. There's plenty of space behind it for that. So.
The plumbing, right there. I'm looking at it, and I remember what you said about trying to do things yourself. Did you have a contractor in here doing any of that?
I had surgery on my shoulder last October, and I wanted to get the plumbing ready for inspection. So I'd done most of the plumbing. I hadn't done the PEX. I use PEX A, by the way. I found that was a lot easier to use for me. I like the idea of the joints being full size rather than the reduced size, which is PEX B. Anyway, if you have someone come and do your work, you've got to be on their case all the time. I, as I said, just had surgery, so I was kind of just staying indoors and getting reports based on, I've done this, done that. And when I came out and saw it, I was so disappointed. And needless to say, I had to redo most of this in here. This PEX work on here has been redone. It was just really, really horrible job. The solder joints he'd done, they leaked. And this was supposed to be a licensed plumber who did this. And I was just, it wasn't cheap. You know, you may say, well, you went to someone cheap. And I didn't. I just went to someone that was recommended. And that was kind of how I went that approach. But you have to be on top of people all the time. And that's what I didn't do because, as I said, I was laid up with just after surgery. But anyway, lesson learned. I redid it. I did it, which made me confident that it's going to work. I redid just about all the connection points for the plumbing. So that was just a learned lesson in that spin.
One other note about the ERV, it's possible that these things are a little loud. In fact, I bet it's going to be way louder than that Bosch heat pump. If it is loud, you just make sure that you've got at least 3 feet of run on the fresh air side, which you don't hear, but Mark does have here. So he could add a silencer later. It's just called a duct silencer. They're like $150. So I'm looking around and I'm like, Mark, what are these extra framing bits that you've got here? And he says,
the trusses, when you get them, they don't all sit level. So you'll have these up and down, and you can have these ripples in your ceiling. So I put these on here, and you can see some of the areas where they're actually got shims in them to make them flat all the way across. That truss there was sitting high for some reason. It's sitting at the same point on the wall, but the truss itself actually.
You're awesome. You're awesome. It's funny because trusses and I-joists, you know, we consider, and I found the same for I-joists on our build. It was just like they say, you know, that's the sales, is that they're totally perfect, but they're not.
Yeah.
And what is that inside of the closet there?
So when you're building a house, you allow so many feet for the dryer vent, 25 feet, I believe is what it is in Florida. And for every 90 degrees, you have to take off 5 feet from that distance. So if your exterior wall is, say, 15 feet away and you've got 3 90-degree bends to get there, you'll go on beyond that 25 feet. So the way you overcome that is by putting a fan in there, a vent fan.
So it's a dryer booster.
Yeah, so dry. So this is a Fantech, I believe, and it just boosts the vent for it. I don't plan to use a dryer
Because this is going to be an airtight house, and you know better. Okay,
and
so
I didn't want to have the issue of having to have fresh air coming into the utility room. So we're going to use one of these hybrid washing machines, which is it dries and washes in the same machine
with a heat pump.
with a heat pump.
Okay, so ventless.
Yeah, so it doesn't create a lot of issues with exhaust air. They're not cheap, but when you consider the cost of a dryer and a washing machine together, they're not much more expensive. Typically, like $1,900 right now for these machines. There's 3 companies I know make them: GE, Samsung, and LG. But it just seems you throw it in and you don't have to do any more. You just wait for it to come out dry. And I've heard many people say, well, they don't get it really dry. Again, that's the sort of thing we're going to find out. But it's all part of what I want to do. I just want to keep the place airtight.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a cultural difference too, because I think Americans like to imagine that their dryer, makes it piping hot. Like when I pull out those hot muffins and I fold my t-shirts.
Typically in England, where I'm from, the space is limited, so everything is done on small scale in comparison to here. So everything is compact, and we're used to having this hybrid type sort of area. I think Bosch were one of the first ones in the UK to have those, but they're very common. People just don't have the space there. So over here, I thought, well, we might as well do it and adopt some of the culture in Europe.
So Mark tells me that this is the experimental side of the house.
Yeah, so I've never installed a metal roof before, so this is why I started the metal roof. And I did strengthen. A lot of people don't do this little detail here, just folding off over the end of the panel, which gives it a bit more of a 3D look, a bit more solid look in that respect. So
yeah,
I did that. This wall, the way that I assembled this was I used Coravent to create airflow through the rain stream. So the Coravent comes in several sizes, but this is the way I went. The large piece goes above me. It already has a...
This is called the SV5 for those of you who are going to shop for this later.
Okay.
It's got that little screen on it right there.
Yeah. So that is on the bottom of the wall. This goes at the top of the wall where the battens go. Then I leave an inch clearance above that. And what I do is I take this raised screen, which is from another company, Quarix, I think it's called, and I cut it. It comes assembled like that, but I noticed it was, if you take the staples out, it comes apart like so. So all I did was I ripped it down on the table saw, so it came 2 pieces now. And at the top of the wall, it creates a nice little black line vent that gives me a total airflow through the wall.
Dude.
So it gives a bit more control.
I mean, that's funny. You keep saying this is experimental, that's experimental, and you're just kind of, yeah, I mean, this is awesome. That's a great detail. How cool. Yeah, it's very pretty. Very clean looking. Also, I just have to point out Mark's pad for the HVAC condenser. That's awesome. I feel like I've never seen that before for some reason. We're all just using these pads out there to try and simulate what you've done. So you guys comment below. Thanks very much, Mark, for showing us your amazing house. And it is worth it, by the way, for those of you who are like, is it worth it to take 6 years working on this thing? Do you think it's worth it?
Oh, absolutely. You get a house you want, and you get it done the way you want it to be done.
That's right.
You know that it's been done right.
And everybody who's driving by gets to watch Mark doing this all by himself.
It is quite funny because some people have stopped and asked what I'm doing and why I'm taking so long, and then
you're not from around here. That's what it must be.
Yeah.
Thanks also to Angelina, Mark's daughter, for shooting our intro shot. She's gonna be a great cinematographer someday. You guys like, subscribe, tune in next time.